Hey, rock stars. If you've been on the entrepreneurship journey for a while, you know this feeling. In all the interviews, in all the coaching calls, one truth kept coming up over and over again. Leadership is lonely. Business development is lonely. And entrepreneurship is lonely. You can't just talk to anyone about it. That's why I created the Catalyst Club, a private, values-driven community where you can speak the truth, be your authentic self, and connect with people who understand what you're going through and can actually help. We made it private so you feel safe. We made it affordable so no one gets left out. And we built it on values that matter, like showing up, sharing knowledge, and choosing growth over ego. Inside, you'll find coffee with rock stars for real talk and connection, unplugged Q&A for live coaching and clarity, and Catalyst sessions with world-class experts who light a fire under your next move. We're building the most supportive business community on the internet, and we want you to help us do it. Join us today at kellykennedyofficial.com. We're just getting started.
So I'm a finance person, you're a business leader. I come to you on a monthly basis. Hey, Kelly, I'm not here to beat you up because you're not meeting your budgets. I'm here to talk about how can I help you actually meet and beat those budgets, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm here to help. And then you say, oh, that's Anders, that's really, really nice. I've never heard a finance person talk to me like that. Here are some of my big struggles. Okay, Kelly, let's talk about those struggles. I might not be able to help you with all of them, but here are a few where I think can actually, provide some value. Yeah. And then we talk about that, and maybe I need to do some analysis, and I come back and present it and whatnot. But I'm working on your issues, doing what I'm doing good, doing well at, right? Doing analysis, doing all these things. So that structure, that approach will help them to actually have better interactions with people. It doesn't mean let's say if I'm your accountant, then we need to be best buddies, and I need to know everything that's going on in your private life. No, but it's of course nice to be able to have a conversation if you watch the ball game in the week or whatever interest that you have, right? So that I'm not just this cold prick that's coming to you with the hard facts and saying, something is wrong, you gotta fix it.
The great Mark Cuban once said, business happens over years and years. Value is measured in the total upside of a business relationship, not by how much you squeezed out in any one deal. And we couldn't agree more. This is the Business Development Podcast, based in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and broadcasting to the world. You'll get expert business development advice, tips and experiences, and you'll hear interviews with business owners, CEOs, and business development reps. You'll get actionable advice on how to grow business. Brought to you by Capital Business Development, capitalbd.ca. Let's do it. Welcome to the Business Development Podcast. And now your expert host, Kelly Kennedy.
Hello, welcome to episode 310 of the Business Development Podcast. Today, it is my absolute pleasure to bring you Anders Liu Lindberg. Anders is a global thought leader in business partnering and finance transformation, dedicated to turning finance teams into a strategic powerhouse. As partner and chief commercial officer at the Business Partnering Institute, he works with CFOs and finance leaders to help them evolve from traditional number crunchers into key decision makers who drive business success. With a strong background in finance, FP&A, and business controlling, including years at Maersk, Anders has a deep understanding of how finance functions can create real impact. He's also a LinkedIn learning instructor, a best-selling author, and the founder of the world's largest business partnering community, where he shares cutting-edge insights on the future of finance. Passionate about helping finance professionals stay relevant in a rapidly changing world, Anders believes that finance must either evolve or risk becoming obsolete. His mission is to crack the code on business partnering, ensuring that financial teams don't just track numbers, but help shape the future of their organizations. With a no-nonsense approach and a relentless drive for change, Anders is redefining what it means to be a finance leader in the 21st century. Anders, it's an honor to have you on the show today.
Thanks a lot, Kelly. I should steal that intro. That was awesome. Making it seem like, yeah, hopefully I can live up to that. But let's see. Thanks a lot for having me here. It's a true pleasure.
Dude, there is no question you are leading this field. Like zero. So don't even stop being so humble. You know what? From like the moment that I figured out who you were and we had our first conversation, I've been excited to have this conversation with you. One, because I had no idea what business partnering was. And like, I don't know whether I had my head in the sand or not. I'm excited to have that conversation with you today. I am in North America. You're in Copenhagen, Denmark. So a little bit different worlds, but hey, like it's what, 0 or 3 degrees there for you today? It's 0 for me. So we're closer than we think.
Yeah, exactly. 4 degrees. I was checked 4 degrees Celsius, right? So I'll just check the Apple Watch here.
Absolutely. Yeah. We just warmed up to 0 Celsius today. So yeah, we're living in the same equator.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, it's really interesting. At the end of the day, business partnering, when I finally kind of did some digging and saw what it was, I was like, why is this not the way that we operate finance in every single business? I'm really excited to chat with you about that today. I know for a fact that probably 90% of my listeners have never even heard the term before. So it's going to be a deep dive. It's going to be, a drinking from a fire hose moment. I think we're going to slam them with a lot of information. I'd love to chat with you about the future of finance. I know you talk about AI quite a bit, and I'd love to chat about maybe what are those impacts going to look like for the finance sector as we move, into 2027, 2028 and beyond. But before we do that, how did you end up on this journey? How did you end up such a thought leader in this area?
Yeah, sometimes I ask myself that, Kelly, and, we have to go many years back by now, right? So I actually worked in North America for 2.5 years as well, down in Houston, Texas.
Yep.
And I got there in early 2012, young 27-year-old, very hopeful about the future and his career and everything else. My first leadership role of a small team and so forth. So really, really exciting times. And of course, I spent a bit of time just getting the job onto the wraps as well. But then sitting over there, starting to ponder, well, how should finance be different? How can I use my experiences? How can I use that to promote my career, both inside Maersk, but maybe also, what are your outside one day? And then I started writing and talking without knowing what it should lead to.
Yeah.
And then in May 14, so more than 10 years ago now, LinkedIn, which is my main social media platform, opened up for their blogging product. Back then, it was a very traditional blogging product. You could publish a blog, and then maybe someone will read it, right?
Yeah.
And I dare say, I think the first 27 blog posts, no one was really reading it. 100, 200, 300 people. It's not no one, but it wasn't like, had these stories about people publishing and then they went to the bathroom and they came back and there was 200,000 people having read it.
Yeah.
So it was kind of slow. But then, it's like audience started to build. So I, since May 2014, I've basically published 1+, let's say, blog post a week.
Wow.
And in 18, LinkedIn launched their newsletter product where I was part of beta group and I could then start the newsletter. People can subscribe to it as they can to newsletters. And over the years, lots of things have happened. And, today there's a newsletter with close to 350,000 subscribers on LinkedIn.
Wow.
But all this writing, led to people kind of seeing, who is this Anders guy? Maybe just like you, Kelly, who's this guy? I've never heard about him. Sounds interesting what he's talking about. Let me meet with him. So in 16, there was two critical meets, if you will. One was a guy called Bo. Bo, he was writing a book about business partnering. I was writing about it in the small, let's say, articles here and there. But he'd read an article I'd written for a magazine in Denmark. And then he reached out to me and said, Anders, I'm writing this book together with one of my colleagues. Do you want to be a part of it? I'm like, yeah, who doesn't want to be part of writing a book?
Yeah.
And it turned out he had already written like 275 pages by that time. And the book ended up being 410 pages, something like that.
Wow.
But that meant we published the first book probably ever to be written about business partnering, at least kind of end to end and not just a few 50, 100 pages here and there. And so that was 16. And then late 16, that was early 16, late 16, Michael reaches out to me. Michael at that time was a senior manager at Deloitte, and he was getting tired of moving people from head offices here and maybe in Scandinavia and put them out to Asia somewhere in a service center and offshore them. And no one is really focusing on what happens then to the people that are left, those that are not necessarily let go. How do we develop those? He wanted to develop those into business partners, which was what everyone was talking about here in the Nordics, at least. So he reached out to me and said, "Hey, Anders, you are doing a lot of this stuff. I have some thoughts and dreams of maybe wanting to do something different. Should we talk about that?" So we met some very gloomy afternoon day in Copenhagen, and he shared a bit about his dreams. And I was like, "Well, I'm writing the book right now, and my wife is already a bit not upset as such, but she's not too happy with all the time it's taking. So, like, I don't know what I can do." But we kept talking throughout 2017, and April 2018, we found and launched the Business Partnering Institute, which is where we at today, so to speak, almost 7 years later. So there's not a single event or something I can touch on, but it kind of, reflecting on it, I have a simple motto that I use, which
Yeah.
is keep building. I just keep building something, whether it's for myself as a brand or for others. I don't always know what it's going to lead to, but if
Yes.
history proves itself again, it's going to lead to some very exciting, interesting, and great things.
Oh my gosh, what an incredible story and an incredible lesson as well, Anders. I look at that, a blog post a week. That is, I do 2 podcasts a week. So like I understand the commitment of making that commitment and sticking with it. Dude, it takes grit. It takes determination. There were a lot of weeks where you're like, I don't got it in me. Not to mention, people don't talk about how challenging content creation is. So obviously, I do these interview shows, but once a week, I actually do an individual show where I show up and I teach business development, not so unlike what you're doing. And it's hard, like coming up with content, especially, and people, the funny thing about content is people think it actually gets easier. And
Yeah.
my argument is it's easier in the beginning. And as you go further and further down the rabbit hole, it gets harder. And it's not just because content creation is hard. It's because your expectations of yourself in blog post number 1 are a hell of a lot different from blog post 501, right?
Yeah. We maybe see it a little bit different in the sense that, content creation, like everything else, like it's a skill,
Yeah.
right? And if you keep working at it, you get better at it. And then, as you say, Kelly, maybe you raise your expectations for yourself. So, the complexity and the challenge of it, is maybe always somewhat the same. But,
Yeah.
I kind of always say to people in terms of content creation that I could look at a tree or a stone or a person or have a conversation and some content will appear, not necessarily
Yeah.
about a tree, but about something relevant to my audience. And because, of course, now the social media part is such a big thing of what creators are doing these days, you also have lots of engagement, conversations, and of course, now we're a consulting companies. We also have a lot of coffee chats with clients and whatnot. And every single engagement, there's a story there that just needs to be told one way or another. So
Mm,
from being a blogger where I kind of have to, from week to week, think about something to write about,
yeah.
it's more to hear all these stories. And I often hear myself, going from one coffee meeting, maybe to the next coffee meeting and saying, so yesterday I was with a potential client and we talked about this and that. And then the client did like this. And I was like, okay, we've also dealt with that in the meeting. And then on the
Yeah.
next meeting, I say, oh, we just talked to another client yesterday. And when we talk about this, the client did like this. Is that also your experience, right? So it becomes a much more relational storytelling thing that just evolves naturally. But if you look at it from the outside, and of course, I have other partners in the company that are not necessarily content creators and writing a lot. They're like, Anders, after more than 10 years, how can you keep coming up with new stuff to write?
Yeah.
And somehow it just keeps coming because it's a skill. I think someone said if you practice something for 10,000 hours, you become a champion at it, right? And I think that's
Yeah.
that's probably where you and I are in this field, right? But then we just raise the expectations so we keep each other sharp, right?
Have you ever experienced writer's block?
Not really.
Okay.
Maybe that's a big thing to say because, of course, sometimes you sit down and write something and it doesn't flow as naturally as another time. But I've never sat down, looked at a piece of writing and not be able to progress within a very short period of time. We spent 6 months during last year writing a book. It's going to come out here later in the springtime. And of course, we had an outline with chapters and whatnot. But from there, we had some slide decks, and I just wrote. So in terms of A4 pages in Word, I
Yeah.
just sat down, I started writing, and then a few days later there was 15 pages, then chapter done.
Wow.
That's just my process, and I know that's different from many other people. Many other people, they may need a lot of thinking and listening and structure and whatnot, and then they can start writing. I just write, and then it somehow comes to me, probably because I've been doing it for so many years.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that I've necessarily experienced writer's block, but when I'm doing like show plans, right? Because I do show plans twice a week. So when I'm doing show plans, specifically not for my interviews, because I'm always so curious for these interviews, right? I just love to talk. I love to ask questions. So like these are so easy for me. But the actual individual shows over time, I've found sometimes I got to coax it out of myself. You know what I mean? So I have this like little habit, and I kind of wanted to like ask you if you have any weird writing habits where I actually put on like 90s alternative music. So I'll have some like Foo Fighters, some Blink 182, maybe a little bit of Van Halen in there. And I'm just like, that's my like happy place. And if I can get there, I find that I can coax writing out of myself. So sometimes I'll like just set a fire and I'll just kind of hang out by the fire on the floor with my music playing, writing my show plan. And for me, that's been something that I've been able to like coax out, even when I'm not feeling like it, even when I'm not in like the creative zone, I can make it happen.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's what it is. It's not that it's hard necessarily. I think that over time you have to figure out, how can I make myself more creative? How can I like get things flowing? Do you have any like weird rituals like that to kind of help you out?
I won't call them rituals as such, but I also like the music part, right? My wife, she's from China, and of course I'm from Denmark, right? So it's not that she can't speak Danish, but just to keep a level playing field, we speak English at home. But that also means I never hear, for instance, the Danish music, right? And
Yeah.
I actually do like some Danish music. So when I'm just working from home, or having to focus on something, I put on some just some current Danish music that I like to listen to, right? And that always gives me a nice kind of feeling. So music definitely follows me a lot, and something that just puts me in a nice setting to be able to write.
Yeah.
But then I think the other part is really just taking a topic and just keep unfolding it. And of course, now with AI tools and everything else, it becomes easier to unfold topics and get ideas of how to unfold them. But business partner, you mentioned that in the beginning, right? I could talk about that for 30 seconds. Maybe you'll ask me to give the elevator pitch later. I could talk about it for 8 hours almost, right? So
Yeah.
so it's kind of like rubber. You can bend and stretch it, and you can really compress it to the hardest ball ever, right?
Yes.
And that's kind of how I see content as well. That every single topic, I should be able to treat it like rubber. And sometimes I need to get 10 blog posts out of a single topic. Other times I need to do 30 seconds pitch in something, right? So again, that's also a skill, comes with experience within the topic, right? And if you are an authoritative figure within whatever topic you're at, you can typically do that. But if you're kind of on the way there, like I often do LinkedIn lives or shows or webinars and
Yeah.
whatnot, where the speakers are maybe a bit less experienced, not necessarily in their topic, but in terms of communicating that. And then they tend to maybe, let's say the script say you have 3 minutes, and maybe they talk for 7 or 8 minutes. And it's rarely me that's the host, but I can look at the host, and the host is going like, stop, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, but it's a skill, right? So if you don't
Yeah.
help them, if you don't practice it, then that is going to be difficult.
My goodness. Yeah. And I totally know what you're talking about as well, because, I mean, business development, for instance, sometimes I'll get asked to come and speak to a group about business development. And it's really hard to like talk to, as an entire subject on a whole in like 45 minutes, right? Like, that's where I like find myself. It's like, okay, how can I give the most amount of information in 45 minutes to help these people? But like, it's really, I could talk about business development for hours. Like literally at this point, I've talked about it for 300 episodes. So,
Yeah.
right? Like, take your
Exactly.
pick. Yeah, it's a fun challenge. Just put it that way. Anyways, dude, let's get into it. I do want to talk to you later a little bit about LinkedIn, because you're killing it on LinkedIn. And I know we have lots of listeners who are looking to like work on their personal brands. They kind of got the message in 2023. It's time to
Yeah.
time to up our game a little on LinkedIn. And I love to learn from people like you who are sitting, you're sitting with 408,000 followers, something like that. So I'm sure you got lots to give. But today's show, I would really love to just dive deep into business partnering. I know we have a ton of listeners, including myself, who before meeting you, I'd never even heard of it. And I think potentially it's something that could greatly benefit North America if we just understood what it was and started to implement it. So let's talk about it. Let's just get into it. What is business partnering, Anders?
So business partnering is really an activity where specialists, like for instance, finance professionals, I'm a finance professional, right? Or it could be IT professional, HR professionals, whoever that is, communicates that expertise, uses that expertise to develop insights, new perspectives around the business that will help a business leader, could be a sales leader, or could also be the CEO or someone else, to make better decisions and to execute stronger once we make those decisions. Because if you have an expert at the table, and that expert is not good at business partnering, meaning not good at building relationships, meaning not good at influencing decision making, meaning not good at communicating their expertise, then that expertise is not taken into account when you make decisions. Unless, of course, that expert can just say, you do this and you do that. But it's rarely the case, right? So it's for these deep functional experts to learn to translate that deep functional expertise into a language that other people who are not experts in their field can understand it and can use it for their decision making.
Super valuable. How is it happening currently, right? Like, I'm not a finance guy myself. I'd like to say I like to know numbers, but I don't make great decisions. When it comes down to numbers, not my world. Talk to me a little bit about that. You spent time in Houston. How are decisions being made in Houston versus how decisions are being made in Copenhagen? Let's give them like the actual compare and contrast.
Yeah, and I don't want to get the whole North America on my back here, but it is a bit more, at least in the U.S. I know there's other countries in North America than the U.S., right? But at least in the U.S., it's a bit more top down or command and control. And my time in Houston, that's more than 10 years back now. But I met with a finance leader not very long ago who is working here in Denmark, and he's a Dane. And he just changed to a company where they are actually also headquartered in Houston, Texas. And he had to go there last fall to present the budget. And so he go there to Houston, Texas, and he goes to the 25th floor of a building, and he goes in there with the CEO and the CFO of the company. And, they're sitting at one side of the board table. I'm sure you can all imagine how the board table looks like. And he and the division leader or whatever is sitting on the other side. And they're like, having a very classical budget meeting where they'd be queried and, why this, why that. And they're basically being told, these are what your numbers are supposed to be. So it's a lot more top-down command and control and saying, if someone says to do something, you do it. And it could also be finance saying, we need to now cut this expense or do this in our contracts and whatnot. And then people might not like it, they might not agree, but they will do it because that's how the management style is. Maybe not all of North America, maybe not all industries, whatever, but at least that's general conception. In Europe, it's much more, let's say, democratized in a way where you actually have to convince people why it's a good idea. Again, there's also differences across Europe, but if you cannot convince me that it's a good idea to implement this tax policy or whatever, or actually act on the analysis that you have prepared, then I'm not going to. I'm just going to ignore finance or HR or whatever and do what I, in my gut, feel is the right thing. And then there we are. So that's why in the European setting, but also in, say, the old Commonwealth, right, the UK dominated world, you more have to convince people, take a business partnering approach where I have insights, I have new perspectives that could help you make a decision. But that's not going to matter if I can't influence your decision making. So we've actually put it on a formula and we say, what is business partnering? It is insight times influence equal to impact. And it's a multiplier because if your influence, which typically is the challenge, is low or zero, you have no impact. So that's the equation that we work with, right? And we have to have the influence part in that equation because otherwise we won't be factored into the decision making.
Okay. It makes a lot of sense. And actually, from my standpoint, when I started thinking about it, Yes. Like I want the insights from my finance team when I'm making big decisions. I need to know what I'm not seeing. And I think most founders, most CEOs, we understand the operation, but we are not finance experts, right? Like that is not our expertise. We need that person in our corner.
Yeah.
And what you're advocating for is finance can be in your corner if you just enable them to do so. Let's talk about that a little bit because let's say that you've grown up as a finance manager, CFO, whatever, in the command and control, right? What is that kind of what we're up against right now is we have to educate the world that there's a better way?
You know, obviously a lot of great American companies have made a lot of great value creation and profits and whatnot. So it's not a knock on the American corporate culture, for instance, right? There are different ways of doing things and they can all work to some extent at least. But the thing is, if your insights are not being factored into the equation, you are more likely than not, let's put it like that, to make on average, and I know I'm really generalizing here, right? But on average, you're going to make worse decisions than if insights from your functional experts, and it can be others than finance, right, are factored in. That's basically all that we are saying. But just because we know that, it doesn't mean that finance, for instance, has a carte blanche to be at the table and to say whatever they want. They still need to communicate in a language that people understand. Because if I
Hmm.
come there with my big deep table of numbers and whatnot, or spreadsheets, or here's the spreadsheet with the numbers from last month, you figure it out. That doesn't work. I mean, you're a business leader, right, Kelly? Imagine that your accountant or whatever, just said, here's a pull from the ERP system, and you figure it out. You'd be like, thanks, but no thanks, right?
Yeah.
So, well, no, it's kind of on us to make it into a shape and form that they can use it, and that's often the challenge with finance people and other functional experts because we're not that good at it. We're thinking, well, I understand it. I mean, well,
Hmm. Hmm.
no, stupid idiot. Why don't you understand it, right? It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Yeah. My degree is why. Don't have that education, man.
No, exactly.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. So what it comes down to, like you're saying, is finance can help influence decisions. But once again, you kind of mentioned that influence maybe isn't the skill that they've been developing. So let's talk a little bit about that. How are you helping these finance people develop the skill of influence? Because as me and you know, influence has a lot of things to it.
Yeah, no, it's a very loaded topic, right? But let me just start by a small fact here, which is not a scientific fact because it's based on polls from LinkedIn. I asked back in time, my finance audience, which is probably 90% of the people following me, why did you go into finance in the first place? Was it because you like to look at numbers with business, with people, or other comment, right? And of course, 55% said I like to work with numbers.
Hmm.
35% said I like to work with business. That was probably mostly me, but I also like numbers, by the way. And only 10% said because I like to work with people. This is by no means shocking or surprising to anyone. But the fact is now with better technology, automation, now even AI coming into the picture, it's less about working with the numbers and much more about working with people. So
Mm.
the very fact I went into finance and tried to get away from customer service or sales or some of these
Yeah.
other things, I'm now forced to actually try to become good at. So there's always a choice, but there's not really a choice not to do it. So it's a burning platform for many finance professionals, for many accountants out there that they need to become better at advising, at
Hmm.
teaching, and not just telling people what to do. So that's kind of that's the why, if you will. So how do you teach people that are not people, but numbers people to become people that are good at
Yeah.
one thing? You give them structure. Because what are finance people good at? They're good at structure. So you give them structure, tools, templates that they can use to better understand the situation. So it could be a personality assessment tool, right? So DISC or something like that.
Yeah.
Blue, red, yellow, all these profiles. Finance people are typically blue, and sales people they might be yellow, for instance, right? How do you strike up a relationship or a conversation with such a person? Okay, let's talk about that. Let's practice that, right? It could be, okay, so I'm a finance person, you're a business leader. I come to you on a monthly basis. Hey, Kelly, I'm not here to beat you up because you're not meeting your budgets. I'm here to talk about how can I help you actually meet and beat those budgets, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to help. And then you say, oh, that's Andres, that's really, really nice. I've never heard a finance person talk to me like that. Here are some of my big struggles. Okay, Kelly, let's talk about those struggles. I might not be able to help you with all of them, but here are a few where I think can actually, provide some value.
Yeah.
And then we talk about that, and maybe I need to do some analysis, and I come back and present it and whatnot. But I'm working on your issues, doing what I'm doing good, doing well at, right? Doing analysis, doing all these things. So that structure, that approach will help them to actually have better interactions with people. It doesn't mean let's say if I'm your accountant and we need to be best buddies and I need to know everything that's going on in your private life. No, but it's of course nice to be able to have a conversation if you watch the ball game in the week or whatever interest that you have, right? So that I'm
Yeah.
not just this cold prick that's coming to you with the hard facts and saying, something is wrong, you gotta fix it.
Quick pause here, and thank you for tuning in and supporting the show. I want to recognize Hyperfab, a Canadian precision fabrication company built by the team behind Hypervac Technologies, supporting projects in both Canada and the United States. They focus on high-quality sheet metal, fast turnaround, and solving complex fabrication challenges when it matters most. Hyperfab is proud to be our title sponsor for 2026. Thanks for listening. Let's get back to the show. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I've ever had a finance person walk into my office with that level of empathy. So,
It should.
yeah. But that's kind of what you're saying is like, hey, be empathetic, have a little bit of emotional intelligence, and see how you can help, right? Like you're approaching it from a standpoint of you have a skill set, a very valuable one, an understanding of the total, numbers of the business and how it's operating and what might be great decisions. But people are not communicating this. They're just holding on to this data until the CEO or somebody reaches out to them and says, hey, we need to know the numbers, right?
Exactly.
Okay. One of the things that we talked about in our initial meeting that I found very interesting, and I wanted to spend some time on you with because I think it's really important. You mentioned that we have to get employees to the point where they care and value the company in some ways in the same way as the founder or owners of the company. I remember looking at you and saying, that's a great idea, Anders. I like that. But how the hell do we do that?
Yeah. No, so I think that the thing about business partnering, first and foremost, is that, there's no rules or regulations or laws that says you got to have business partnering in your company, right? There are some rules and regulations say you got to have some books and financial statements and, some tax returns and all this stuff, right? So there are some compliance and control that needs to be there. And if you're a listed company, even more and so on, right? But there's no one saying you have to have business partnering. So it's more trying to, well, first of all, look at an individual and say, would you like to work in a company where you do meaningful work that is valued and having an impact in the company?
Mm-hmm.
You'll be hard pressed to find someone that says no. So if I ask a person in finance, for instance, that question, and they're like, no, of course I want to do that, but I don't feel I have that because they never listen or whatever. And then I say, okay, well, if you want to have that, your starting point is, let's do the role play again, Kelly. I'm coming to you and saying, the only reason I'm here is to help you be successful. But as you said, you've never had a finance person come to you and say that with that mindset.
Yeah.
But if you all did that as a business deal, you'd be like, that's nice. Let's see if you can carry your weight. Rather than I come to you and say, the numbers are looking good. You got to do something. I'll show you numbers next month. You're like, F off, right? I mean, I'll do my best, but you're not really helping me. I need help here. I need what I got to do. So to get to that impact in the company, this is the approach. And I can tell you that whenever I talk about some of my success stories as a business partner, they're also failures by all means, but those success stories, I'm always like, I'm getting goosebumps because that's the feeling you get when finally, after years and years of analysis and rejection and whatnot, someone is finally listening to you because you're communicating the right way. They're taking your insights, thoughts into account. They're acting on them. and they're creating better results. And you know what they're saying? Couldn't have done this without you, finance guy or girl.
Yeah.
Right? That
Wow.
that is what cool stuff is made of when you're in finance and you're trying to have impact in on the organization.
Well, and you touched on something that, we're talking business partnering, but ultimately, I feel like if every time somebody walks into your office and they're bringing the bad news, right? Like, of course, over time, you're going to associate those people with they're the bringers of bad news. You're not going to want to see them. You're not going to want to talk to them. And, I've seen this from operations managers. I've seen this from, finance, but I've also seen it from, everyday employees of an organization who just simply have, it feels like the negative mindset, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's important for, employees to remember most leaders are very positive people. We genuinely have to live there because if we end up in that negative mindset, the whole game is over.
No, absolutely. But I think, Kelly, also a key point here is that if I have the right mindset as a finance person in business partnering, bad news to you is as bad news to me as it is to you, right?
Yeah.
Because we are in this together.
Yeah.
Whereas many finance professionals, they're like, Kelly, I have some bad news to you. I've also prepared some analysis. So I really, Godspeed, I really hope you figure it out, right? But will you succeed or not? Not on me, right? It's on you. And I'll help you understand if you are succeeding, but it's on you. And I'm saying, maybe you can do more about it than I can as the finance person, but I'm going to, cry my heart out as well if you don't succeed just as much as you will. Because if the business is not succeeding, then there is no finance.
We're in trouble.
Finance jobs, right? No businesses were created to have a finance organization. Finance is created because there are businesses. So you must be successful for me to be successful. So I'm willing to bet all my career and success on you winning. And if I can be a part of that, then I feel a little bit winning too.
That's amazing. But I got to talk to you about this because there's a lot of companies right now, most companies that I've worked with, where that investment simply isn't there. You're right. Those people are there to do their job. But if the company fails, that's their idea. It's like, I'll find another job how do you, and I get that this is a hard question. So but I do have to ask you, how can employers foster that level of commitment and dedication to the cause with an employee who simply doesn't reap the true financial reward of the business? I think, me and you, we'll work 4 days in a row if we have to, 12-hour, 18-hour days for the success of our business. Why? Because the success of our business is also our success, right? Like, we reap the reward of that. Your operations manager, sure, they have a great job and hopefully you look after them, but they just simply don't reap that same level of reward. So how can we bring that out in our people?
Yeah, so I think there's two steps to it, Kelly. And the first, it goes across anyone in corporate life these days, and for many years and decades back, I'd almost say is that if you get statistics on engagement in most companies, the average company would have more than 50%, maybe 70, even 80% of their team members being at least partly disengaged in the work that they do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just for finance. I don't know if it's worse or better for finance, but it's around there. So if you have a company where people are disengaged in what they do, that is point number one to fix. You have to create an environment where people get up in the morning and love to go to work, or whether it's virtual or face-to-face, doesn't really matter, but they love being a part of this company. And to get to that, one thing is the work environment, colleagues, strategy, working with the right things and so on. But it's also showing a willingness to invest in your people. Basic example, we do a lot of communications training, right? And then I always start out by asking, so, how many of you think communication is vitally important for your career success? Hands fly up, or if it's a 1 to 10 scale, it's above 9 on average, right?
Yeah.
And then I ask people, so how much formal training have you actually received in your career? If you work on a 1 to 10 scale again, is maybe 4.5 on average, right? So I think this is a skill that's vitally important for my career and it's probably vitally important for the company as well. Yet I haven't really been invested in. And you can probably do this for many other skills that people need to succeed in their role. So if you have a work environment where people are disengaged and you're not willing to invest in people actually progressing their skills so they can further their career, because most people are career driven, right? And at least in the business that we're in, then you won't get to it. Then you won't get to that mindset. For me, the first time I heard about business partnering was back in 2010, April. I was part of a graduate program. And the then CFO of Maersk, he goes up on stage at the final module of this graduate program and talks to us graduates. And he says, I want finance to move from the trunk of the car and into the co-driver's seat, being a co-driver of the business.
Yeah.
That all sounded very good. But the fact is, he provided 0 to no guidance on how to do it. And there was no training in how to do it either. So I
Yeah.
heard the message. It sounded exciting because I wanted to create an impact. I wanted to actually be part of driving the business, but I had to figure it out myself. And, we just talked about it. The influencing and all this stuff is really difficult for finance professionals and other functional experts. So I want to do it, but I don't know how, and I'm not getting help. That's really what it comes down to. So people want to do this. They want to have an impact, but as an employer, you got to help them.
Okay, well, let's lead into that because I know we have some ears open now. I know we have some people listening who are like, you know what? This actually makes a ton of sense. I do want my business partner in the co-pilot seat here helping us make these decisions. And I want to help my finance person transition from a finance person to a business partner. So let's talk about that. What does that transition look like? Can it help these companies start to make that transition?
Yeah, so I don't want to be too self-serving, right? But of course, you got to invest in training in some of those, let's say, more people-related skills, right? I talked about them before, I think influencing, relationship building, communication. But you also need business skills, right? Give them opportunities to go out and experience how your company does business, right? If you are a retailer, either go into the stores, if it's brick and mortar, or sit with the customer service team or whatever, experience the business so that you get some of those business things in as well. And then there's something around leadership also, right? So finance leaders, perhaps they need to role model their behaviors, but they also need to help maybe, how do you lead yourselves? How do you change things, right? So it's a big change journey, personal transformation, but of course also functional transformation. And we all know transformations are hard and they tend to fail. And I can say this with confidence because I spent 10 years becoming good at business partnering from the first time I heard about it, April 2010, until probably 2019, where I finally, now I got it. Now I could go into probably any company and in 3 weeks I could do better business partnering than I would have ever done. And probably also better than most of the people inside the company, even I have no industry or company experience.
Yeah, it is interesting. So basically it comes down to we have to provide them the tools. We have to put together the strategic path. Like we can't just expect our finance people to take the initiative. We have to help them, right? It's not going to be, okay, we want you to be a business partner, figure it out. It's we want you to be a business partner and here's the path and we are going to help you accomplish this goal. We got to hold their hands and help them get there.
Yeah, because otherwise, and again, I think this comes across many things in life. Average people will be average people. Good people will be good people. Great people will be great people, right? To use a kid's phrase by now, I'm going to help people go from good to great, or from average to good even. That could also be something. Or if we don't believe that they can actually succeed as business partners, because I want to give everyone a chance, but there are just some people for whom it's not that thing. Help them see a different path somewhere else.
Yeah. One of the other things that we talked about when we met the first time was your passion for helping people find fulfillment. And I wanted to talk to you about that because me and you both know finance can be challenging, especially over a 10-year career, right? You can definitely, have waning passion for your position. This isn't just finance. Honestly, if you do anything for 10 years, you probably have waning passion for whatever you've been doing. You mentioned that you want to help people find more fulfillment in those positions as opposed to necessarily always relying on the passion. Can we talk about that?
Yeah. So, it's funny. I was having lunch with a senior finance leader yesterday, and she asked me, what did you actually study back in school? And did you think you would be doing what you're doing now? And it kind of made me remember a story that I used to tell in the past because it was so, telling for what I was doing back then. Is that when I was a student, and in Denmark, we typically have student jobs. We don't do internships. We have student jobs while we're studying, also to pay for living expenses and whatnot. And I was in the beginning working mostly in some finance related jobs, but I was also interested in HR and people development. And so I took a student assistant role in an HR department within the same company, but also worked in finance. And it was an engineering primarily company. And I got to work a little bit with those engineers. And I was also playing in the company's bowling team with some of the other engineers. And I heard these engineers talk about HR, not me specifically as a person, but HR, like, these HR people, can't they just stay out of my way and let me
Hmm.
do my job? And I, just post it on the portal, the job, and I'll figure it out. Don't worry about it, right? And back then, being an early 20-year-old student, I was like, is that really what I want to spend the first 10 years of my career on, trying to convince people all the good that HR can do? I was like, no, no, no way, no way. I'm going to go back into finance. And then
Yeah.
I got a finance job, right? And what did I find out in finance? It was exactly the same. The business leaders were talking about financing. All these finance people, can't they just get out of my way and just let
Mhm.
me do my business? And at some point, you got to make a stance. So I took a stance in finance, and of course, I'm reflecting on it, going back in time. I wasn't thinking about that back in 2007, 8, when I, took my first stance in finance. That, okay, this is then the place where I got to convince people that finance can actually do some good in the world. So I spent that 10 years trying to convince people and become good at myself, to the point where today I haven't convinced all business leaders out there, because of course I haven't had conversations with them, but I feel I could convince every single business leader that you should have finance in your corner, and I'll help your finance team understand how they should act and be when they're in your corner. Agree? Yes? Okay, let's do it.
Absolutely. No, it's it's just interesting because, I think that passion is one of those things that it's so intrinsic, right? And it has so many different influences, right? Like you could be super passionate about something, but then have a health challenge come up. And now, you know what? It doesn't really matter what was going on before. All that matters now is you got to deal with your health challenge.
Yeah.
Or heck, you got family challenge. Maybe you're going through a divorce. I know a lot of business owners are working their asses off. And unfortunately, they're not spending enough time at home and eventually they end up going through divorce. And then you simply can't have the passion for your business in the middle of that turmoil, right? And so I think it's kind of one of those things where passion, it can definitely come and go. It comes in waves. Is passion truly the important thing if that's the case? Or is it intrinsic motivation to do something bigger?
Yeah, I think the missing word here, Kelly, is purpose. So
Mm,
when passion and purpose meets, that's a superpower. And if you go 5 years back, 10 years back, you were talking about finding that why, their a purpose, right? Simon Sinek, start with the why, all this stuff.
yeah,
And today, maybe we don't talk so much about it, but finding your purpose. So my purpose is to help finance people find fulfillment in their careers, and help finance organizations actually create value in the companies where they are. That's my purpose. And that purpose has been driving me unconsciously all the way from when we started back then in
yeah,
2012, maybe before, but consciously since 2017, when I actually started voicing it out. But the passion from actually having tried it on my own body, but also tried it helping other people doing it, and getting the goosebumps, that is just unparalleled. And then of course these other things can come, and you never know about health and whatnot, but if you have passion and purpose, you have a superpower.
yeah,
And I want as many people to find that as possible. But the thing about passion is, you can be passionate about having a microbrewery, or knitting, or playing
yeah,
basketball, or whatever. But it's for few people in the world where they can actually turn their passion into a business or a career path, right? So we're passionate about many different things, and I think in terms of career and work, you also own it to yourself to work with something that you're passionate about, because the
yes,
passion challenge also plays into the engagement challenge, right? if you're working in a company where you can't really recognize the company anymore or the reason why you're there, that's a sign for you to say, okay, I should do something different.
Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle to make that choice, right?
I
And
know.
I think, they get comfortable. They get comfortable in their life, right? I was comfortable when I was a salaried employee. Life was good. You know what? I work way harder now than I ever did as a salaried employee, but the value, the passion I have for what I do now is so much greater. So I think you're absolutely right. If you can mix that passion with purpose, man, it's powerful. Anders, I want to wrap this up here talking about a couple things. One, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I get a ton of questions about personal branding. And dude, I'm like leaps and bounds behind you, man. So talk to me a little bit. Like obviously you've been on LinkedIn doing this thing since what, 2014? You said you started writing articles. And it's funny because back then people didn't even know how to use LinkedIn right. So you were like way ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody could have seen what COVID was going to do to change LinkedIn. It's night and day beast now. But I get questions all the time. Okay, it's important. I get it. I have to start building a personal brand. How do we do this? And I do my best to teach them. But, I would love to hear it from someone like you. You're sitting at, nearly 500,000 followers on LinkedIn. You've been writing an article a week, since 2014. That's huge. How many articles is that, by the way? That's over 500, right?
It's 800 plus at least. Don't have the latest
Wow.
one, but it's a lot.
Wow.
It's a lot.
Wow. Congratulations. That is
Thank you.
absolutely
Thank you.
incredible. But just for those listeners who are listening today, thinking about starting their personal brand, it's 2026 in this particular episode. We're in mid-January, I believe, is the launch of this show. So they're thinking about it. They're thinking about what can I do different here for the year? How did you do it? How does one build a personal brand?
So just taking one step back first, Kelly, because there's also a lot of discussions around this. What is personal branding and what is a personal brand? So just the way I see it, and of course there can be more definitions, right? The personal brand is essentially the sum of opinions that everyone else holds about you. And personal branding is the activities you make for people to think about your personal brand the way you want it to be. So in order for working with any of those two, you first need to define what is your personal brand, right?
Mm,
What do you want it to be? My personal brand is probably, the intro that you gave, right? Being a senior advisor to finance and finance leaders and CFOs out there. But you need to know what you want your brand to be. Otherwise, how can you do personal branding? How
yeah.
would you know if you have succeeded because you don't know what people think about you? So I think that's the first point. Start to define what do you want your personal brand to be. And when you know that, well, then you got to start building authority around that personal brand. And, if I should, beat a bit on myself to be fair, I haven't been a CFO before. I haven't made it to the highest ranks of corporate. Yet I still talk about what CFOs should do, right? I probably need to build a bit more authority in that field also, but I've built authority over all these years with all the content, with all the speaking, with all the thought leadership that's gone out there. And, many companies in the world basically trust me for all these sources of knowledge. But that's what I've built up over the years. When I published my first blog post, How to Break Free from a Stereotype in May 2014, I wasn't anything, right?
Hmm.
But I wanted to work on my personal brand so that companies, even my own, would hire me in a more senior position because they saw me as someone that was an authority in this field and could maybe have a good plan for how to develop a team or a function or even further. But it wasn't so well defined for me back then. But looking back,
Yeah.
that's kind of what it was.
It was very forward thinking at that time. Like, I don't think anybody was thinking, personal branding in 2014. At least I hadn't even come across it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I don't know if it was outspoken for me in my inner voice or whatnot, but at least I wanted to make myself attractive in the market. And it worked quite well, even though I never left Maersk for another company per se, other than what I started myself. It led to all these other things, right? And if I hadn't started that journey, this company would at least not be included me, but would probably never have been founded in the first place. So all these things have happened because I started personal branding activities.
Yeah. I can totally agree with that, because there's been some incredible things that have happened since launching this show that I just could have never seen coming. I'm a firm believer now. You can't see the best opportunities coming your way. Like, they're going to show up on your doorstep and you just got to be ready to say yes.
Well, exactly.
Okay. So essentially, you started sharing your knowledge with the world, setting yourself as an authority in the space. Talk to me a little bit about what that takes, because I can tell you that I nearly quit this at episode 3 because like, what am I doing? Who am I to teach the world business development? I had a lot of who am I moments, a lot of imposter syndrome moments to get over. Talk to me a little bit about that.
No, so I think for me, I just started sharing my opinion, my story, my how I do things. And you know what? That can never be wrong. You can disagree. You can want to do it different ways, but my story is my story. And if my story starts to inspire people to maybe do more business partnering or maybe do something else, then you're starting to build authority. It can never be wrong as such. Someone can come with a better, more well-researched perspective, all this stuff, but it can never be wrong. So if you start sharing your opinion about something, it could be from scratch, or it could be an authoritative figure in your industry has shared a report, and then you share your take on it. It can never be wrong, right? So that's where it starts. And then there is an inflection point at some point where people start to refer to you as their source for maybe starting their journey. And that's when now you've maybe made it a bit next level. But ideally, of course, there is a story in the real world behind it as well, right? So you're not just creating content on LinkedIn and suddenly you're going viral by the algorithm and you have 500,000 followers, but you're sitting in a basement somewhere and have not tried anything in your life.
Yeah.
Ideally, there should be a story behind this, right? So of course, I've told my story and tried to get more practical examples of how to succeed with value creation in finance out there, because I saw none when I started doing this. So that was my story. And then I started to tell other people's stories because I heard so many stories. Then I started to create frameworks around it. And then I said, here's maybe a 1, 2, 3-step approach that you can use. And then it just builds authority from there. But it started with my voice, and that can never be wrong.
It sounds to me like what you're telling people to do is just be authentic. And I know that that's like a catchphrase word at this point, but what he's essentially saying is just talk about yourself in an accurate and true way. And don't be afraid of what anybody else is going to say. And I would argue that at this point in the show, I've had 2 negative comments, Anders. And maybe I'm just really lucky, but at this point, we're 3 years into the show and I've had 2 negative comments. And they weren't even that negative. One was I didn't like one of the guests you had because of a company they worked for. Okay. And the other was your show intros are too long.
I like that long show intro, I would say.
Oh, it wasn't for the guest shows. They liked the guest shows. It was for my one-on-ones because I used to do show updates.
Well, but I would add this, Kelly, absolutely be authentic. And then secondly, be consistent. All right. Yeah. Because what happens is, and you said it yourself, right? You wanted to quit after show 3. So Kelly has made 3 shows. He quit. So now Kelly is no longer a podcast host, right? But you didn't quit. And here we are 300 something episodes later, right? And now you're an authoritative figure in the business development field, right? Having had amazing people on this show and people refer to you as a business development thought leader and whatnot, right? Because you stuck with it in your authentic way. Right. And I'm sure a lot of the content, everything you come up with these days is heavily influenced by all the guests and all the shows you've had during time. Right?
Absolutely.
You're not expert in this field, not just because you were Kelly and being authentic Kelly, but because you were consistent and you stuck with it.
Yes. And so much of business development is just that, right? If you can do consistent work every week like you did, like I do with this show, magic happens. But it really is like a little bite every week turns into an elephant over a year, right? And people forget that. People think, I got to do these big actions, and then wait a month and do another big action. No, It's little action every day leads into massive action over time.
Small micro steps forms habits, forms mindset, forms culture, and whatever you do, right? So starts with that first win step.
Absolutely. When people are hearing this episode, Anders, your book is out. Can we talk a little bit about that book? I'm going to have it in the show notes. I'm going to have it in all the posts. But can we talk a little bit about your book?
Yeah, so the title is Communicating Financials to Executives, right? So helping these specialists, now these finance people, communicate their expertise to people who maybe they've taken an MBA and there's a finance course as part of it, but that's not their functional expertise, right? So we want to help these finance professionals do it differently so that all the long hours they've done of analysis and whatnot, that they make this count. And it's basically just 5 simple steps that we want them to follow. Share, of course, the financial status. We got to know if we're ahead or behind. Share some insights from your analysis. What have you learned? What can we use for decision making? Make a recommendation. What should we do about this? Or at least facilitate a discussion to come up with different actions we could take. Back it up with arguments and facts. Why is this a good idea? And then how are we going to take the next step on this? So what action are we going to take when we go out of this meeting? Those 5 steps in that sequence, pack that into a half an hour monthly management reporting meeting, whatever it might be, and you're going to see incredible results. But 95% of finance professionals are not doing anything close to that today. So we believe we can have a truly transformative approach.
Amazing. It almost sounds like an influence guide, if we might call it that.
Yeah, I mean, so influence, of course, is a part of it, right? And I spoke about the equation at the beginning, insights times influence equal to impact. And of course, to influence, you got to be able to communicate well. And I'd say, and I said this many times during the show now, it goes beyond what we do in finance, right? But everything we do in life boils down to a moment of communication.
Yes.
We're communicating now, right? And we're communicating on social media. We're communicating in our private lives. It all boils down to communication. And, wars have been fought over poor communication, right? So I don't want you guys to fight wars out there, but poor communication doesn't lead to good results.
No, it doesn't matter how great your ideas are if you can't figure out how to articulate them.
Exactly. So
Amazing,
that's what the book is all about.
Perfect. If you're listening to this, the links are everywhere that you find this show, so it'll be there. Anders, before we close up today, please do lead us into the Business Partnering Institute. I know we have, leaders from around the world listening to the show right now. I guarantee you they resonated with what you've said. How can the Business Partnering Institute help them?
Yeah, so we work with finance teams predominantly to help them increase the influence that they have in the company. We do that through learning and development programs, which can also be for other functions like HR, IT, and so on, but primarily in finance. We also do consulting projects for finance organizations, everything from finance strategy work to designing a new organization, to designing a dashboard, to do management reporting, budgeting, forecasting, all these things. And then we actually go out and also do the work ourselves sometimes in case the VP resigns or even a financial analyst, they can't find it. Then we go out and work as interim or short-term contractors as well. So we both, get our hands into the mud. We can also consult them on how to do it, and we can train them to be good at it. So we can basically do all those things, and all of it is designed to make better decisions in the company, execute stronger, so that we all create more value and everyone's happy.
That's amazing. Anders, we're talking to a worldwide audience. Do you have any limitations to the areas you can work with?
No. And, by the time this comes out, probably the limitations are even less. We do have clients from all over the world, most, I would say, from China to the US, to Latin America, Middle East, and of course, in Europe as well. So, of course, there are some challenges with some clients more than others, but not as such.
Amazing. And if people are hearing this and they want to reach out to you directly, obviously, we've been talking about your LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn is blowing up. They can find you there. But if people want to, contact you in a more direct way, what's the best way for them to do so?
LinkedIn is always the best way to contact me, because maybe it's a work damage, whatever. I'm always on there. But of course, they can also go to our website, bpidk.org, and find all the contact information they want there as well.
Perfect. And once again, we'll make sure that those links are up in all of our posts. Anders, this has been incredible. Thank you so much for the 101 on business partnering. Like I said, never had this conversation before, and I think it's going to be super valuable.
It's great. You can still have first after 300 episodes, right?
You would be surprised how many firsts we still have.
Yeah, no, I'm sure there are many of them, but I'm happy to also be one of them.
Yeah. It's a pleasure. I think the work you're doing is incredible, and congratulations on your immense success. I wish you the greatest of luck as you continue down this journey.
Thanks, Kelly, and thanks a lot for having me on the show.
Until next time, you've been listening to the Business Development Podcast, and we will catch you on the flip side.
This has been the Business Development Podcast with Kelly Kennedy. Kelly has 15 years in sales and business development experience within the Alberta oil and gas industry and founded his own business development firm in 2020. His passion and his specialization is in customer relationship generation and business development. The show is brought to you by Capital Business Development, your business development specialists. For more, we invite you to the website at www.capitalbd.ca. See you next time on the Business Development Podcast.